I was, after our heart-to-heart last week, I was scrolling through YouTube on Monday, and I listened to an angle on a fishing story that really caught my attention. So that's been bouncing around inside my head for a while. I'll explain that shortly. And as is traditional, I get to share that. So it doesn't just bounce around inside my head, it bounces around inside everybody else's head. Okay, so, and then I'm a space nut. I'll watch the launches of SpaceX and the NASA and Artemis and all of that sort of stuff. So they returned Crew 5 from the space station, splashed down this morning. And now if you listen to the commentary on the audio of these launches and these broadcasts, they say nominal, if everything is working correctly, situation nominal. So I've got this in the back of my head, so I'm thinking, but then, so the title that I originally had for this was situation nominal. So, but then going through and preparing, I realized, no, it doesn't really work. That really doesn't work, because how do you say situation nominal in a fishing story? It doesn't work. And language doesn't. Pardon?
It sounds like a fishy story.
It is a bit fishy.
Okay.
Yes, there was a bit of a pub snoop here. So, and knowing that Theo is a serious fisherman, and I know Jesse and Josh really had fun at our last fishing trip, but I know the other guys really enjoyed it. So there are actually two good fishing stories in the Gospels. One, now when we think about it, we think about the first one, which is in Luke chapter 5, which is where Jesus actually calls the first couple of disciples to the ministry. And it's chapter 5, Luke chapter 5, verse 1 to 11, if you're making notes. And see there how Jesus arrives, and he's got this whole crowd following him, and he said, and Peter and the guys are sitting on the beach, they're busy washing their nets because they've been out the whole night and they've caught nothing. So now, professional fishermen, let's just say their language and manners tend to be rather salty. And the Sea of Galilee, as far as I know, is freshwater, correct?
Yes.
So, I'm not making a pun. There's a reason for why I'm saying that. So, he comes there, he's got this whole crowd, so he says to Peter, listen, can I borrow your boat? I just want to, and he pushes out a bit, starts teaching. Now, you can imagine, he had these fishermen as who's this guy, he's coming up here and teaching, and he teaches the crowd, and then he says to Peter, let's go out, let's go fishing. And I can just imagine, if you actually go read, it's in verse 5, if you read that bit there, you can hear the professional fisherman responding to the request to let's go fishing. Because he's been out the whole night, he's just washed his nets, just prepared everything, and now this guy's basically, Jesus is charging them to go fishing. And I made another comment here. Okay, well, that's fine. That there, so you just let me just do this quickly. Let's go and stand away. Oh, okay, anyway. That was sunrise on purpose over the Sea of Galilee with the boat and all that. So now, I actually wrote this in here, and the reason why I said there's no pun is because because of this. They've been out fishing with no profit. And I'm not making a pun there, because Jesus is not just another prophet. He is the Son of God. He is not just another prophet, contrary to what other people preach. So now there in verse 5, you can just hear Simon Peter talks about Simon there. He says, okay, boss, you want to go fishing? Let's go fishing. You've been out the whole night and caught nothing, but whatever. You just hear he's tired, he's exasperated. Now this guy wants to go fishing. This guy that's just rocked up there with his whole crowd of people that are crowding the place and causing making noise and all. Let's go fishing. So they go and throw the net out, and they catch so many fish, the net's starting to break. So they call he calls his partners, James and John, sons of Zebedee. Make a bookmark, and they bring in the fish. And then he says, he says to Peter, Simon goes from, okay, boss, to master. You know, because you must go, because I'm a sinful man. I can't. You can't be in my boat, really. You know. And so that's calls the disciples, and the rest is history. We read in the Gospels. But the second. There's a distinct difference between this story and the second story, because the second fishing story comes right at the end. It's not right at the beginning, it's right at the end. So it's in essence a bookmark, if you will. You start off with the fishing story, come with me, I'll make you fishers of men, and you're ending off with the fishing story. And it's in John 21, and the whole thing from verse 1 to verse 14, but we're going to just pick through it. And it's the same situation, but if you read John chapter 20, verse 31, it's almost as if there's a book, it's a chapter ending. It's like there's some scholars that say, why is John 21 there? Because it ends almost in John 20, verse 31. It says, I've written all of these things that you may believe. It's like ending, that's the book's end. But then there's this additional text that comes in. So from verse 1, it says, afterwards Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee, sunset. And it happened like this. So the story goes like this. So it's, in essence, John is telling like the fishing story. This is what happened. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, doubting Thomas, put my finger in the wounds. Nathaniel from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, James and John from the first fishing story, and 2 other disciples were together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them, and they said, we'll go with you. Remember, James and John were Simon's business partners, fishing partners back in the day. So the whole crew's back together. And they're going fishing. So they went out in the boat, got into the boat, and went out and caught nothing the whole night. Now, before this setting, Jesus had always come to them in some form of a religious meeting or church setting or worship, like prayer or something to that effect. And he appeared to a whole bunch of different, but he appeared to the disciples, he'd appeared to Mary, he'd appeared in the upper room to a whole bunch of people, he appeared to his disciples. And it was only like 7 of them. And what's interesting, one of the things I was looking at said, you can see, I don't know if Thomas is one of the original fishing group, but after that experience in the upper room when Jesus said to me, come Thomas, here's the wounds. Here he is with the guys, he's there with Peter, with John, he's there involved because he doesn't want to miss out on anything. And But now this setting is not a church service. It's not a religious setting. This is the boys going fishing. This is the guys going fishing. Let's get our stuff and we go fishing. And then verse 4. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was him. And he called out to them, praying, and said, don't you have any fish? But the way, the term used there, hey guys, what's up boys? Hey lads, to use the English term. G'day mate, to use the Australian term, sorry. The point is, it's an informal thing. It's like you would, if you're a fisherman going to your fishing spot on the beach, it's the sort of thing that you'd say to somebody else. Are they biting? Well, you know, that's that sort of idea. It's an informal thing. I can see the difference in the first story. They didn't know one another. Jesus knew them obviously, because he knew he was calling, but they didn't know him. The disciples didn't know him. And this second fishing story is more of a human story, that human interactions. Now, Jesus is appearing to his disciples. He's showing himself to his friends, his closest circle. But I can hear the fishermen in the fisherman's voice, because they're there in the boat. It's been the whole night, sunrise, they've caught nothing. And all you can, you hear the seagulls are starting to make a noise, you can hear the water against the boat, but there's no flapping of fish, there's nothing, And here this guy calls them off from the side. What's up guys, have you caught anything? So what's the answer? No. There's no description, there's no, it's just like, no. It's sort of, you can hear the exasperation, they're tired, they're very short with him. So he says to them, throw your net on the other side of the boat, on the right side of the boat. And they did, and they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And now we see the characters of the different disciples. John realizes who it is on the shore. And he referred to that disciple that Jesus loved. Said, that's Jesus on the shore. And what's Peter's response? He's out the boat. At least what he did, he put on a jacket just to cover all the fishiness and all the dirt from the boat, but he's out the boat in the water to go to Jesus. That's Peter's passionate response. I think you would do that. You're the one that sort of would just dive off the boat, sort of. And he forgets the guys on the boat. It's like, that's Jesus. I'm going there. I want to be with him. I want to get to him. John stays in the boat with the guys. They're pulling the thing in. They're only about 100 meters off, but still, if you've got a huge net of fish, and they're big fish as well, it's going to take you a little while to get to the shore. And when they got there was a fire ready for them with fish on the fire and bread. And Jesus says to them, bring some of the fish you caught. And then Simon goes back and helps the guys bring all the fish out. And it says there it was full of large fish, 153. But even with so many, the net was not torn. So normally with us Christians, we like to say, what does number 153 mean? And if you're a fisherman, that sounds right. Because we caught 153 fish. There were a lack of big ones as well. That's a fishing story. That's not it doesn't need to be spiritual abundance or some manner, but it doesn't need to be that. These are fishermen that are saying, we caught 153 lack of big fish. And then Jesus says to them, come, let's have breakfast. Sit down around the fire, let's have some fresh fish and bread together. Breaking bread and having a meal together with friends. And still, they knew it was him because of what was happening. Because John had already said it's him. Out of Peter's reaction, you can see it's him. But then also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, are remembering that first fishing trip where the nets were breaking. So now there's also that thing of it was the story, I'm reminded of Uncle John again, on the road to Emmaus. Where we met them, and then he was expounding the gospel to them, and then they said, and then he went away, and they said, were our hearts not burning within us? And I reckon it was this situation here as well, is that James and John, sons of Zebedee, and John the disciple, and Peter, and Thomas, and Nathaniel, were like, it would be almost, they couldn't ask if it was him because they knew it was him. So he took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. And it ends that little story there. This was the third time that Jesus had appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. After that, he restores Peter and prepares them for ministry, etc., etc. But this story captured my heart because I see us in the story. Especially considering our heart-to-heart we had last week, is that we are the disciples in the boat and we are fishing. And I can't tell you where in the night it is, if it's sunrise, if it's what time it is. We're fishing, and we've been fishing for a long time, and the nets are in the water, and we've done the things. We've done the fishing, the Christian fishing, the church fishing. We've done it. But we're still in the story, and the story is not over. Because Jesus is on the shoreline. He's calling out to us, asking us if we've got any fish. And I'm thinking of the words that have been spoken over this church, the promises that have been, the prophecies that have been given to us, the words that have been spoken. And normally if you have an interaction with someone and they have a bad response to you, first time, it's probably them. Second time you think, it could be them, but it could be me. Third time, then you know, hang on, wait a minute. If everybody's having the same response to me, then obviously the issue is with me. And we've had so many people come through this church and share word after confirmatory word after repeated confirmation. These are people that come from different parts of the world. They come from America, Australia, Asia, Europe, Africa. They're all saying the same thing. They're all giving us the same promises. So now the problem isn't that you're getting this whole bunch of people that are all hearing from each other and all saying the same thing. That's not the issue. The words are spoken, the words are true. So the promises that have been made to us are true. The promises of God towards us are yes and amen. So we need to hang on to those, and that's our fishing nets, that's our fishing lines. That's the promise of Jesus on the shore saying, cast your nets, you will catch some fish. It's not maybe you'll catch, because it says there, if you go read it, it says you will find some. So I want to transition from that. We have the fishing story. We are in the boat. We have the nets in the water. But now, I'm going to pull a couple of verses out of this. It's quite a long chapter, section. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, from verse 4. And it's talking about the gifts and the varieties of service and the varieties of activities, but it says in verse 4, it's the same Spirit. Verse 5, it's the same Lord. Verse 6, it's the same God who empowers them all in everyone. And then each, verse 7, for the Spirit, given by the Spirit. 8, given by the Spirit. 9, by the same Spirit. 10, by the, verse 11, all these are empowered by the one and the same Spirit who gives to each one individually as he wills. My point is, we all have access to that same Spirit. Doesn't matter what gift we might have. Renita's gifted as playing drums. He has the same Spirit. I play guitar. I can sing. I teach. It's the same Spirit. We each one of us have the same Spirit that empowers us to do different things. And then from verse 12, it starts talking about the body having different. Yeah, you heard that. You're talking about the body having many members. And each one of us need the other. If the eye is just an eye, all it's going to do is lie on the floor and get dry and dusty. It's not going to be able to see anything because it doesn't have a brain behind it to process the images. The brain doesn't have a vehicle to carry it around. It doesn't have a mouth to speak. It doesn't have hands to do. It doesn't have feet to move. We all need one another. My point in saying this is, in our fishing story, every single one of us counts. It's not about Stuart, it's not about me, it's not about Doreen, it's not about Ernest. It's about Jesus, who's called us to the fishing. And who's called us to go fishing. And he's given us the tools and the gifts and the abilities through the same Spirit, the same God who empowers us for the common good, for the good of the church, for the growth of the body. We are the body, he is the head. We are the church, he is the high priest. He is the cornerstone on which we are built. So my point with saying all of this is, in our fishing story, we are all called into the boat. We are all called into the boat. We are all here for a reason. We are all here to pull in the nets. We are all here to do the job. And each one of us is key. We can't do without the other. One role is not better than another role. One activity, one function is not better than another activity or function. We are all together for the good of each other. And each one of us has a contribution to make. So my point in that is, sometimes God will give you a key, a word, a scripture, a vision, something. And it's up to us to bring that to the group, to Stuart, to leadership, and say, this is what God is telling me. We made a joke in the week, because there's a I'm not going to go into it but there's a company that's decided they're going to come up with a quirky way of selling chocolate to make a statement. So I sent a message to Stuart, hey, let's sell chocolates with quirky slogans. My point is, each one of us has a key to play, has a role to play in this story, in this fishing story. And we all need one another to make this work. So, let's go fishing.